Good afternoon, this is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding here to do a brief update of the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program, otherwise known as OVDP. So technically, OVDP is no longer with us. OVDP was an offshoot of the Voluntary Disclosure Program, more specifically the traditional VDP program, which has been around for a very long time. The IRS had developed this offshoot only for offshore-related types of matters, but that program was merged back into the traditional voluntary disclosure program. So now whether you have offshore accounts, domestic income, cryptocurrency, anything like that, anything unreported where there's a willfulness component, you would do VDP. There's no specific program for offshore matters. The purpose of this is to discuss individuals, that's U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, foreign nationals who meet the substantial presence test. There's various exceptions, exclusions, and limitations for each category depending on who has to file, but that's the baseline 3 categories of individuals who have to report foreign information. Entities may also have to file because U.S. person is not limited to individuals, but the purpose of this video is just to discuss individuals and the OVDP or VDP program. The main issue when someone is going to do VDP is whether they're willful. If someone is non-willful, there's various different options and flavors of programs they could do depending on their specific facts and circumstances. You have the streamlined procedures, you have delinquency procedures, you have reasonable cause. If you're willful, you do not qualify for any of those programs. You're ineligible. You're disqualified from those programs. So the only program you can do, unfortunately, is VDP. And I say that because we'll get into the penalty scheme in a moment, and it's much worse than it would have been for non-willful taxpayers. That's why it's important to not be fear-mongered by attorneys into believing you are willful when you are non-willful. Willfulness is essentially 3 different categories. You have intentional, which is you're supposed to report foreign accounts, but you don't report them. The IRS has a program for that. That's what VDP is. So you knew you were supposed to do it. You didn't do it. Now you're having second thoughts. You're worried about a whistleblower, ex-business partner, ex-spouse, and you want to get into compliance. Willful blindness is when you intentionally close your eyes so you don't know the information or close your ears. Let's say your spouse comes to you and goes, hey, we're going to go to the CPA. CPA says we have to report the foreign account, so she's going to go through all the different things we have to do. Let's go together. And you go, I don't want to go because I don't want to know. And if I don't know, then I can't be willful. Well, then you could be willfully blind. Reckless disregard is a tough one. It's a real gray area between non-willfulness and reckless disregard. Reckless disregard is significantly more careless. There's no bright line test to determine it. It's just you know it when you see it. Maybe you're talking to your buddy and your buddy's like, hey, you're supposed to report, right? We're both from Portugal. We both have accounts. My CPA says you're supposed to report. You should look into it. And you go, nah, that doesn't sound right. But you decide you don't want to do any further research, or you do a little bit and you realize you think there's something you have to do, but you decide to ultimately not take that step. That's going to be something in that reckless disregard, willful blindness. And if you fall into any of these 3 categories, you don't qualify for non-willfulness. So what makes the VDP program bad for most taxpayers is that the penalty can be severe. So it is primarily for people who are willful and seeking to also avoid potential criminal implications. There is some concern that the pre-clearance makes you certify that you're willful and that you shouldn't have to do that, and that might change down the line. But currently, October 2025, in order to do VDP, you're going to have to claim that you're willful to the IRS. You can't get around that. You can't opt out and claim non-willfulness down the line. It's not like Streamline where it's kind of one fell swoop. You submit the whole thing and wish for the best. With OVDP, VDP, it's a process. You do the pre-clearance letter, you get accepted. After you get accepted, you have to do the next portion of the letter. It's a 14457, 14457. You have to do the second portion of that form, and then you get the further approval, and then you get assigned an agent, and then you go through an examination and an audit, and you produce a whole bunch of documents. And when it's all said and done, you will 99% of the time avoid criminal prosecution, investigation. We've done several VDP programs over the many years we've been doing this, and we've never had anybody criminally prosecuted. So general consensus is if you go through the program and you're fully transparent so that you don't hide any information and you give them all the information and you pay the penalty, you're probably going to be okay. The penalty's tough. It's 50% maximum value, but there is a minimal penalty. So the minimal it's 50% or 100,000, whatever's higher. So if you have $5 million in unreported foreign accounts and you're willful, that's a $2.5 million penalty. If you have $60,000 of unreported foreign accounts and you're willful, that's a $100,000 penalty because that's the floor, the baseline, and it adjusts for inflation, so it's closer to like $140,000. In addition, there's a 75% fraud penalty for the highest year with tax liability. So it is not for the faint of heart. It is for individuals who are willful and are concerned that they may be criminally prosecuted or investigated. Let me reiterate that. Back in the day, non-willful individuals might do VDP or OVDP. Why? Because you do 8 years of returns, you get yourself into compliance, the penalty might be manageable, digestible, depending on what you had. There wasn't necessarily a floor penalty. There was a percentage, and it went up every year, 20, 25, 27.5. But for some people, they'll gladly pay that penalty so they don't have to avoid, so they can avoid issues down the line. They get the closing letter, which you don't go through the non-willfulness procedures. Now, when you do VDP, you have to certify that you're willful, and so a lot of taxpayers don't want to do that. So it's really only if you are willful. It is not for people who are non-willful just seeking to get a closing letter. For taxpayers who are out of compliance, we have a ton of free information available on our main website and our sub-websites. You can always reach out and schedule a reduced fee initial consultation if it's appropriate to your matter, and it's something that we handle here. Again, my name is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.